You've heard the quote, nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it true. You've heard Earl Nightingale from the 1960s say that we become what we think about most of the time. And recently, I just listened to an interview with a billionaire. I forgot the person's name, but the billionaire said, if you want to make more money and achieve more success in your life, then carve out an hour of your day where all you do is simply think. It gets those creative juices flowing. It grabs those ideas and creativity from the ether that you can use in your life and your business. And you might be saying, well, Brandon, what do we think about? What does that process look like? Today, we are speaking to a man who has those answers for you. His name is Mr. Stanley Greene. We connected very recently, and he has a methodology called PowerThinking, which we're going to dive into, that will help you to achieve your dreams in your life and your business. You know the fee for the broadcast. We don't show any ads. We don't have any sponsors. We do that because we don't want to interrupt your viewing experience. And you are the reason the show has grown the way that it has over the past 2 years. Thank you for being the best part of the Be Better team. And all we ask is that you share this episode with just one person who would use this information in their life as well. But only if you took away a strategy, only if you took away an insight or a new learning, or maybe Stanley or myself made you smile. And that's enough for you to share the show. So without further ado, let's talk to our guest of the hour, Mr. Stanley Greene from PowerThinking. And for those who don't know Stanley, Stan is a seasoned professional with 2.5 decades of experience in helping individuals, large corporations, small businesses, and even government entities reach their full potential through positive engagement, financial management, and empowerment. He has conducted power thinking workshops for large companies that you know, such as Comcast, Merck, and Aflac, as well as internationally with partners in Beijing, China, Tokyo, Japan, everywhere around the world. This man is preaching the principles of power thinking, and we have him here for you today on the Be Better broadcast. Stanley, it's great to have you here, my friend.
Brandon, thank you for having me. Really excited to be here.
I'm excited to talk with you. And you invited me too. We connected a couple weeks ago for everyone listening. And I saw what Stanley was doing on LinkedIn. Stanley's got a lot of people on LinkedIn who watch him for his different principles and philosophies and motivation and whatever it is. But Stanley hosts a call every single week. And we're going to talk about what goes on that call that you can join. It's a free call. But I joined this morning and I listened for about 15 to 20 minutes. And Stanley, talk to me. What is it that you talk about on these power thinking calls? What is this methodology? Talk to me about power thinking.
Sure. Well, power thinking was formed about 8 years ago. And the goal was to help people, really tap into the power that each and every one of us has to accomplish anything. Now, part of accomplishment, it's not this straight line. You just think about it and you get there. And there are going to be bumps along the way. Life has its obstacles, its bumps, its setbacks. And so the real key around power thinking is not just keeping our mind on where we need to be, but strengthening ourselves such that when we have those distractions, when we face those obstacles and setbacks, we can keep moving. It's easy to say, hey, we just can't push through or be resilient. But in our focus on this thing called resilience, it's not about just encouraging people to bounce back and push through, but to equip them with skills, evidence-based skills that came out of the University of Pennsylvania's Positive Psychology Center that has been proven to help them to really focus on what's important, to avoid these negative thinking traps, recognize that we have these 50,000 thoughts a day, and how we can navigate so that we don't fall into a state of helplessness when in fact we can keep moving through and pushing through and achieving.
Yeah, I think one of the greatest things I hear when I speak to salespeople specifically and you get the same thing because you work with Aflac. I've done some work with Aflac as well. And one of the biggest things they say is the thought traps that I find myself in, like what you just mentioned. And specifically, the keywords I always hear are negative self-talk and disempowering self-talk. And I always ask, well, what does that look like? When does that appear? And it generally appears, like you said, on the road to a specific goal. When a salesperson is prospecting, when they're about to make the phone call, they're about to drop by the business and have that first conversation, or presentation, and they start having these thoughts of, I'm not enough. Am I the right person for this? Am I going to do well, or am I going to crash and burn? Right. And like you said, we all experience thousands and thousands of these thoughts every single day. And one of the things that's helped me, and I'm curious to ask you the same thing of what's helped you with this, because we all experience it, but something that's helped me is recognizing most of the time, not all the time, but recognizing this isn't my thought, right? This is simply a thought that is coexisting in my mental space at this period in time, but this is not necessarily my thought. I didn't create this thought. It's just passing through the ether at this point. And I get to choose whether I accept this thought as true or not true, right? So I'm curious with you, how do you combat, if maybe that's not even the right word, but how do you handle these thoughts when they come into your own mental space?
Sure. So I remember, not only do I help do training with Aflac, and they're a client of mine, working with new associates who are fresh into sales school, and as part of the curriculum, our Power Thinking is right there. I joined Aflac to test this material out on myself as a commission-only salesperson, so that I can experience what they experience. It's one thing to come in and say, "Boy, do I have the training for you. This stuff works, and so let me do it." But it's another when you're walking in their shoes and you do what they do. You start from zero and start to build a portfolio of businesses doing strictly cold calling, people that you don't know, business owners that you don't know, and face the same challenges in terms of our thoughts. Our brains are processing 50,000 thoughts a day. Typically, and this has been proven, and 70 to 80% of those thoughts are usually negative or repetitive negative. And so the challenge is being able to detect, these thoughts. As you mentioned accurately, they are popping in our heads. Every second and a half, there's another thought. And when you're in commission sales, it really compounds the negativity, because many people walk into commission sales not believing that they have the ability to do it. They may have been reminded by close friends, people they trust, family members, wait a minute, sales, you're not cut out for that. So now you start with that foundation, and you're getting ready to approach a business. There's anxiety anyway, because an anxiety is the negative emotion around this fear of a future threat. What's going to happen? Are they going to kick me out of the office? Or if I'm making a phone call, they're going to hang up on me. And so one of the skills of resilience that came out of the University of Pennsylvania's Positive Psychology Center, that's all evidence-based, is around avoiding thinking traps. This was discovered by one of the founders of cognitive behavioral therapy, Dr. Aaron Beck. And there are 8 different thinking traps. So as we're, and as I was going through and making cold calls, a thought may jump in that, I think I know what the other person, the business owner or receptionist, gatekeeper may be thinking. They may be thinking that they don't want it, or they don't want to talk to me. And these are the things that we come in with, which makes it much more difficult to get anything done. So that thinking trap is called mind reading. And so we even have that in our personal relationships, right? You ever have a significant other and they may be, mentioning something to you and you cut them off. "Oh, I know where you're going with that," or "I know what you're thinking." And that's a trap. And we have to, when we recognize that we're ready to cut somebody off, we have to stop, take a pause and go, well, let them finish. And more often than not, when we let someone finish or let someone express themselves, it's very different than what we were thinking was going to come out. So it pays to just back off and wait. But yes, there are many other thinking traps, like jumping to conclusions, and we're overgeneralizing. There's minimizing and magnifying, where we minimize the good stuff, the good things that happen to us, and we magnify, make a mountain out of a molehill, the negative things. Or another term for it is catastrophizing. This is a major catastrophe when it's really not that big of a deal. And there are many more, but real powerful stuff.
I think it's incredible that, first of all, you joined the Aflac team as a commission only representative before you just came in and said, here's this training that will help. But instead, you said, let me show you by actually walking in your shoes and showing you how this is going to help you. And what you said there about the mind reading thinking trap specifically reminds me of something I read in a book. Have you read this book? It's called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz.
I have not.
It's a really good book. It's like this big. It's very, very, very thin book, but it's one of the biggest books in personal development, where one of the four agreements is don't make assumptions, right? And I think we can take that and we can also, it's very akin to the idea of don't prejudge people, right? Because like you said, you're on that call thinking to yourself, this person's not going to want what I have. They talked to an agent a year ago and nothing came from that, or they had a bad experience in the past, or, I'm calling them away from business hours or whatever it is. But it reminds me of a time where my dad was visiting me at work where I worked. I was also 100% commission salesperson and for many years. And he visited me, and this man walked into the retail store that I'm working at. And this guy was disheveled. He was, wearing dirtier clothes. He looked like a farmer type. And I looked at my dad because it was my up, right? It was my turn to take a customer. And I looked at my dad and I was like, oh, we can keep talking. I'll let someone else help him. It doesn't look like he's going to buy anything anyway. And my dad looked at me and he's like, son, he's like, you're going to take that man at your desk right now and I'm going to leave. He's like, because I never want to hear you prejudge anybody again. He's like, you never know what that man's going to do and what he's going to want or what he's going to want to buy. And I was like, okay, well, we'll see. So my dad goes to the corner. He didn't quite leave. I take the guy over at my desk and I'm thinking he's not going to want anything. But this man, eventually, he signed up for 5 lines of service with the company I worked with. And he spent a lot of money with this company. And my dad's listening to like the first 10 minutes of it, just looking at me from over in the corner. And I'm like, wow, what a picture perfect teaching moment. But you're absolutely right. We can't assume what people are going to want, what they're going to want to buy or not want to buy, or jump to conclusions. It truly is a thinking trap that we find ourselves in.
Yes. There are 8 thinking traps total. And this becomes the foundation for what is now known as cognitive behavioral therapy. It is about really understanding our cognitions, our thinking, and how we can, kind of question it, and not just, run off with what our thoughts are telling us, because what we're thinking in many cases may not be fact. And especially when we move into a sales situation or interactions with other people, we really want to be cognizant of what's going through our head and begin to question it and not just assume that because I'm thinking it, it must be true.
So I'm curious when it comes to what you mentioned about being aware and questioning the thinking, because that's a heightened form of awareness, right? And we've never been trained in school. And most companies, 99% of the companies, aren't training their representatives and their people on how to think and how to powerfully think. So where does one begin when it comes to power thinking? Like if you have, let's say, a new salesperson, right? Where does one begin and beginning to incorporate these principles into their daily process?
Well, the first thing that we want to do is establish with folks that they do have the power to think differently. Many people come into a commission-only sales situation with the mindset that the way you generate income is you get a job and you show up every day, whether you're productive or not. It really doesn't matter because every 2 weeks you're going to get money going into your account. And so we have to let them, recognize that there's some deep-rooted beliefs that you have going back to when you were a kid, when your parents said, okay, I want you to get a good education, get a good job, and stay at that company until you retire. And this is dramatically different. You have to recognize that you have to change the mindset, and you have to be resilient. I have a chart that shows, the day in the life of an entrepreneur, because essentially when you're a commission sales only salesperson, you're an entrepreneur. And so you have to recognize that with the average person over the course of 6 months, they're going to have some ups and downs. They're going to have some adversity. But take what an average person experiences over a 6-month period in their personal lives and their business life, um, and in terms of those ups and downs, and compress them into one day. That's what you, as an entrepreneur, as a commission-only salesperson, is going to experience. So now we compound the level of ups and downs that the average person may have over a 6-month period, and compress that and compound it into one day. So what we want them to realize is that this is all about, when we talk about business, when we talk about sales, it is about bouncing back, because you're going to get more disappointments, more rejection than you would like. I mean, we, as human beings, want to be accepted, and we love it when people say yes to us and they accept us. And every time there is a no, and we've been conditioned from the time we're very young that no is not a good thing.
Yeah.
But when we're very young, we just persist and we keep asking, Mom, can I have a cookie? No. Okay, well, can I have a cookie? And they'll just keep coming back. Or they'll go to Dad and they'll keep trying to. But then once we realize that no means no, it stays with us. And so when we hear that one no, or I'm not interested, it hurts a little bit. So we need to really instill these strengths of resilience, and have people working on building these skills so they can get stronger in their ability to bounce back faster. And so what that amounts to was what Penn, as the University of Pennsylvania's positive psychology identified, Center for Positive Psychology identified as 7 inner strengths. So that if we're strong in these 7 areas, we will be able to bounce back faster from any adversity, not just rejection in sales, but setbacks in all aspects of our lives. And they are, number one, emotion regulation. And that is the ability to stay calm under pressure. That's huge. Because how many people, first thing that happens, somebody hangs up, boom, now there's sadness or anger, there's emotions set in. That's just on one rejection.
Yeah. Or they pick up and they're like, I don't want to talk to you. I don't have the time right now. Why are you calling me? So even in the moment too, having that is a powerful skill.
Right. And so that's the strength we want to have. We also want to have great impulse control. And that's the ability not to say or do the first thing that comes to mind. And in the case of commission sales, for example, it's quitting. And for all of us, it's usually when things go bad, we quit, whether it's, just kind of going into bed and not wanting to get up and face the world, or just saying, you know what, I'm out of here, out of this job, out of sales, out of a relationship. That's the impulse. Or you say something that you're going to regret to the significant other. The ability to control that impulse is absolutely key. Then there's empathy, the ability to understand another person's experiences and emotions. There's self-efficacy, the belief that you have control over your ability to add value to the world. And when we drill down deep, how many of us truly believe in ourselves? How about the people that accomplish great things? Many of them would say, oh, yes. Well, if you're getting up to make a speech, my parents told me that I could do anything. And they really believe that from young. And guess what happened? They accomplished great things. There's optimism, the view that all things will ultimately have a positive outcome. There's causal analysis, a systematic way of drilling down to the root cause of what has gone wrong. And then finally, one of the most powerful of the inner strengths, the 7 inner strengths of resilience, is reaching out for help. That's taking that initiative to take action when faced with setbacks, or reaching out, texting someone, calling someone who can help, or in the case of struggling how to maybe figure out, the other day, I'm co-president of my class at the University of Pennsylvania, and we were sending out a mass email. So I went into Gmail, and I know I have a contact list, and I want to put them in the BCC section so that other folks wouldn't, when they do a reply all, they wouldn't go to everybody. And I thought, I did this a few months ago. How do I do it? So I'm fumbling around for 30 minutes trying to recall how I was able to get the contact list into the email, something seemingly simple. And then I said, you know what? Let me reach out to YouTube. And oh, it was a 1-minute video. And I said, oh man, click this BCC, click it again. I'll have my choice of what contacts I want. Hit that, and I'm done. How many of us struggle because we're brought up to believe that we need to be smart enough and get smart enough to figure it out. We're rugged individualists. Just push through yourself and get it done. And now we're realizing that reaching out for help is actually a strength. It's not a weakness. And we're hearing that a lot more, especially as it relates to mental health and mental well-being. Folks, get help, reach out for help. Don't try to push through it yourself.
Yes. I talk to salespeople about that all the time, especially because to be a success, if you look at the most successful salespeople, they're generally listening 80% of the time and talking 20% of the time, right? So if you're always listening to other people's woes and problems and what's not working, but you don't have somebody or a group of people in your life who you can go to and say, hey, this is what's going on in my life. This is how I'm feeling. I need help with this, right? So a lot of the greatest salespeople are great listeners, but they just listen, but they're not talking to other people. So go find someone, like whether it's a counselor or a therapist or a coach of some sort. I think I can guarantee a lot of the people who are habitually on your weekly calls are probably already successful salespeople. Right. A lot of successful salespeople join and they're already at the top of their team, they're top of their class, whatever it is, but they join because they know that joining is why they're at the top of their team, because they're feeding their mind. They're continuing to grow. So you're absolutely right. And it reminds me that the idea of we have all the answers that we need at our fingertips, literally with Google, even in the 20s or whenever the year was when someone brought Henry Ford to court and they said, Henry, you're extremely wealthy. You've amassed billions and billions and billions, but you're not very smart. And they accused him of not ethically obtaining his riches because he wasn't a quote unquote smart man. And you can look up this story, guys. It's actually a fascinating story. And essentially they were in court and Henry Ford said, why would I fill my mind with all this useless knowledge? Because I think they asked him a question, like they were asking him questions while he was on the stand of general knowledge questions, like how many people fought in the War of 1812? And he's like, why would I need to know that answer when I can push a button on my desk and bring in an expert on that topic who can give me all the answers that I need? And the thing is now, guys, you don't need the assistant. You don't need the button on your desk. You literally have at your disposal the cell phone that can get you the answer to anything you need. So I love all those different principles. You mentioned that you went to the University of Pennsylvania, and that's also where they did these studies when it comes to these self-strengths, these inner strengths. So were you a part of the team that did these studies? Did you find them fascinating after they've already been done? Like, how did you discover these principles yourself?
It's interesting because I think I spent my entire life, coming up against and dealing with these different inner strengths. And that's what I love about them. Even though they were identified and proven in by psychologists and researchers, they're common sense. We're not talking about some special psychological jargon or term or phrase. It's common sense stuff. And so the way I came across this, number one, I've been using all of this, like I said, all my life, from the time, going through setbacks as a child, or in sports. I played college basketball at the University of Pennsylvania. Chuck Daly, who was an NBA Hall of Famer coach, basketball Hall of Fame coach, was my coach then. And the challenges and triumphs associated with sports we see all the time. And then, of course, in business, running underperforming organizations as a young 23-year-old, taking over at the telephone company, what is now Verizon, a construction crew, the folks that are up on the bucket trucks, on the poles and in the manholes and working on the cable lines. I'm a 23-year-old and I had no idea what they did, how they did it. And I was charged with helping them to improve their productivity, even though I couldn't tell them how to do their jobs. So I had to tap into some special strengths. From that to all of the different experiences and organizations that I've led, many of them underperforming, these 7 inner strengths came to mind. So it was around 2006 or 7, I attended a fundraising event for this company called Reflective Learning that had the intellectual property rights to this material out of Penn. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is great stuff. I'd love to run this company. They already had a CEO. They were already, set in motion to do what they needed to do. And, I checked back about 5 years later. I kind of kept tabs on the company, and they just didn't get the traction that they wanted. Great material, but the company, school districts they pitched at that time thought, we just don't have the budget for it. I wound up buying the company.
Wow.
And I said, you know what? I created Power Thinking. We bought Reflective Learning, which is the name of that company. And I said, the rest of my life now is going to be devoted to using this evidence-based material to help people to transform themselves and change their lives.
So what's your goal now that you have this company that you bought years and years ago? And did you change the name of the company to Power Thinking, or is it still the Reflective name that you mentioned?
No, it is Power Thinking.
Okay.
So I created the company, came up with the name Power Thinking, and we did a transaction with the investors and of Reflective Learning, and Power Thinking acquired Reflective Learning, and now it's known. If you ever entered in reflectivelearning.com, it'll take you to Power Thinking. So,
got it. And when you say to yourself, you want to devote your life to these principles that you learned throughout your own life, through the trial and error, through being on the journey yourself, what is because we're over a decade into this now. Power Thinking's been around now for over a decade. And I mean, things I can only imagine, are just ramping up and ramping up and ramping up. Where do you want Power Thinking to be? And what is your vision for yourself, but also for the business?
Well, it's pretty simple, that we change the world. We have about 7 billion people in the world, and that each and every human being has these inner strengths and these skills, and there's 7 skills of resilience, from learning the ABCs to avoiding thinking traps and others, that is part of their foundation. Because if that is the case, we'll see less violence in the world. We'll have less relationship issues, from divorce to, all kinds of, we'll have, less wars. Things can change when people fully understand. More people will bounce back from life's adversities. We'll see less depression, where people are not, just kind of going into that fetal position and not getting out of bed. Because now they've tapped into the power that they already have to get there. They're not expecting that the world will change and someone will grab them and say, hey, we can do this. They'll have the power to be able to reach out and to people that can help them to keep moving forward. People will be able to live better lives. And that was Penn's. The researchers, from Dr. Martin Seligman, who's considered one of the fathers of this new branch of psychology called positive psychology, and tested his theory back in the late 60s of this thing called learned helplessness. That people, you can Google learned helplessness, folks. You'll see the name Martin Seligman. You'll read about the experiments that he did initially with dogs in the late 60s, and then with his own students in the 70s. That through suffering through a traumatic event or repeated setbacks, repeated failures to succeed, that people can actually learn to be helpless, where even though there's a way up, there's a way out, that they don't believe that they can make it. And so he proved that and then started to focus on the opposite. So people can learn to be helpless. Can they learn to be more optimistic? Can they learn to be more resilient? And they prove that, yes, that is the case. It can happen. And I shared with you the strengths that those resilient people have, And then there's a series of 7 skills. That's that, like an athlete, a musician, or, a great student. There are things that you practice every single day to get better. And there are mental skills that I haven't touched on, that I touched on a little bit briefly, that if we work these skills on a consistent basis, we will get stronger in those 7 areas that I identified, and we'll bounce back from any adversity much, much faster.
Yeah, that idea of learned helplessness is fascinating because for years and years I sold cell phones, and every day we're helping people get their first smartphone. Not as much anymore, but especially 5, 6, 7 years ago. And sometimes we'd get people in their 60s who would come in to get their first smartphone, and they were just helpless. Like, I'm not going to be able to learn this. I don't want this. My kids want me to get this. I can't learn this. I'm going to need help. I'm going to need all these different classes. I need guide, instruction booklets.
And that's because I'm old. I'm old. I can't.
Literally, it's that self-belief that you talked about, because then we'd get the grandmother in her 90s, great grandmother, and she's literally 90 years old. And we get this every single day, who comes in for her first smartphone. And she's excited. She's like, I can't believe this technology exists. I know that I can learn this because I've learned 500,000 other things in my life. So, it's going to take some time, but I'm going to learn how to use this. And it's like, what's the difference between that person in their 90s and that individual in their 60s? And it's exactly what you just mentioned. It's the I'm old mindset. It's the belief that I can't learn this, right? You can't teach an old dog new tricks. That concept of self-belief and what you believe to be true really does create the model and the reality of the world that you're living in.
Right. Yeah, exactly right. And if we're open, and it kind of gets back to the kind of open growth mindset, and we're open and we're willing to learn, and we're going to get it. But if we're closed, fixed, and we're saying this is it, this is all I can do, and that's just all I'll ever do, then that's the way it's going to be. And there are people, who are 20 years younger than me, and it may, and will say, "Oh no, I can't do this stuff."
Yeah.
Why not?
That's a very powerful question in itself. Why not? Right?
Yeah.
It's very clear just listening to you that you've discovered your purpose in life. And it's very clear that you're very driven by that purpose and that mission with power thinking, where that's leading you. But you haven't had power thinking your entire life, right? You've been learning the principles, but you haven't had the framework put together in the way that it is with this specific mission for your entire life. You've had it for a couple decades. Now, twofold question here. When it comes to being purpose-driven like yourself and practicing these frameworks, what about the new salesperson who doesn't know what their purpose is, and they're at a sales job because they just want to make money so that they can pay the bills, move into the house that they want to live in, get the car they want to drive, support the family, new family maybe? What happens when someone like that says, but I just feel purposeless. I'm not sure what I'm meant to be doing in this life. My question really, again, it's kind of a big question I'm asking you right now, I realize, but what comes first? The power thinking principles or having a purpose that you're working behind in your life?
Mm-hmm. Well, the power thinking principles can actually help people, to find that purpose. So if you go back to those inner strengths, that self-efficacy is absolutely key. And that is, the belief that you have, what it takes to add value. So we didn't necessarily just say succeed. We're talking about adding value, to the world and succeed. So then the question becomes, if you just take that one inner strength, so what is your value? What is it that you feel really good about in terms of your ability, to make a difference? And we help drill down. Why are you here? It gets back to that why. Other than making money, what is it that, would help get you up in the morning to do this. And for a lot of folks at Aflac, this notion of being able to help somebody else, so that when they're sick and they can't work, and they have a disability plan, that now they're going to get 60% of their income. Or if they're diagnosed with cancer, they're going to get $6,000 just on a diagnosis, and then tens of thousands of dollars. That makes a significant difference for them as they go through treatments and can't work and so forth. So they're making a difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
And so if that resonates with them, then it really is going to fuel their success. And so with anything, you go back in those within power thinking. It's not like there's your why and then there's value. Part of power thinking is part of those inner strengths. It helps them to discover what that why is, what that purpose is.
Wow. Let me just say that we've done full conversations on this show about the idea of purpose. And I think that was one of the greatest descriptions I've ever heard of purpose. A lot of people make it this very ethereal thing, this thing that finds you at this specific moment in time. But it sounds like from your description, your purpose can shift, right? If you're currently with a company like Aflac, your purpose can be the question that you asked: how can I add value to people in the best way that I can? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's offering them the cancer plan. Like we're both connected with Jennifer Hendricks Fogg, right? She's been one of my clients, one of my colleagues, as well as she's been on the podcast too. And she had the cancer plan before her son Logan was diagnosed with cancer, childhood cancer. And from that moment on, she realized, wow, this made all the difference in the world for my life, my family's life. And now I have a personal story that I can attach to what I do to help other people avoid this, or help other people who are going through this same situation. But even if you are the person who you're digging the lines for Verizon Wireless, you're out there doing the manual labor, you're building the homes, you are working at McDonald's as a cashier, right? What's the value that you're adding to people's lives there? People are coming in, they're hungry, right? And they might not have eaten for a long time. Like you never know someone's story, and you have the opportunity now to serve them a really great meal, to give them a great experience. But then when you reach the next rung of the ladder, right, whatever that ladder looks like, the purpose might shift. But you may never reach that next rung of the ladder if you're not defining and identifying what that purpose is, where you are currently with the job, career, or business that you're in.
So that's right. Exactly right. And so it's really not hard to do, but it just takes time to drill down. And that's kind of the causal analysis, which is one of the inner strengths. So, what's the why? What's that cause? What's that cause that you're striving for? And then you ask the question, so why am I doing this? And you drill down to those 5 whys. Why is this happening? And ultimately, like in terms of working at McDonald's, it's not just, hey, I needed a job, I needed money, I want to get started here and move up. But it is, I have the ability to make someone else's life a little better.
Yeah.
And in that moment, when they're ordering something that is essentially sustenance, that will give them that fuel to keep moving. Well, some could argue that maybe it's not as healthy as others.
Sustenance. Hey, they've got apple slices there.
So.
I love it. I'm going to put you on the spot.
It can sustain them
for a little bit. Yes. And then it might, put them back on their butt for a bit. But they've got salads there and stuff. But again,
that's right.
The point
oatmeal in the morning,
the point that we're making rings true, which is you can find that purpose no matter what job, no matter what career you're in, and finding that purpose will help take you to that next level, both internally, externally, the way that you serve other people. I want to put you on the spot here because you're a sales guy. Okay. I'm curious when it comes to your framework specifically. Okay. I've been asking people lately, what do you believe is the number one law of sales success? Right. So from your experience working with all these new salespeople at all the companies you work with, and from what you've observed through your own life, what do you believe the number one law of sales success is?
The number one law for sales success is just what we provide them. I believe it is their resilience. If um, if they're resilient, they're going to succeed. And so the thing that keeps people from being able to thrive is they give up too quickly. So you have good intentions, get started, know you have to make so many phone calls or you have to make so many visits to establishments. And I'm just talking about Aflac now. I have other clients like, Merck, and I've worked with Comcast, and I'm working with small businesses now. But let's just, focus on sales. So if most of the new people coming in can't get through an entire day of phone calls because of the thinking traps that they'll fall into, about this process they're going through, the negative emotions that they'll experience when somebody hangs up on them or screams at them, or just says, you know what, I'm not interested, we're good. In that little ding of hurt that they get with each one of those, they'll tend to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is about their resilience. And I've broken down the inner strengths, some of the skills, and not just saying push through, but if they can build their ability to avoid those traps, these 8 different traps that they'll fall into, if they can perfect this skill that I hadn't talked about, called the skill of ABC, the relationship between the activating event or adversity or this no, the belief about the adversity, which then drives the C, the consequence. The consequence is essentially one or more of those 5 big negative emotions of anxiety or fear of a future threat, or anger, the violation of one's rights, guilt, the belief that you violated someone else's rights. So, I'm really imposing and they didn't expect my call, and I'm uncomfortable with that. And so you feel guilty that you are interrupting them, and then of course there is sadness. That's just pure loss. Someone calls, you set an appointment, they call back, or you call them to follow up, and they say, well, we changed our minds. We're just not going to go through with this, and the sense of loss. Yeah. Realistically, I mean, we're talking potential income, right? Commission that you counted on, and now it's just nothing. And then there's embarrassment. You're getting started and you're having some trouble getting your first sale, and some other folks that started with you may have gotten their first sale already. So you feel now that you've lost some standing in that group, and that's what embarrassment's all about.
Yeah.
And so those combinations of emotions are driven by what we believe about what happened to us. And so if we believe that, hey, this is just part of what you do, this is going to happen, I'm going to expect the best, but be prepared that it may not happen. I may make 100 phone calls and only get 1 appointment, and that's actually a good day.
Yeah.
It's not a bad day, but most would say that is a horrible day because I made so many calls, I got so many no's. So it does get back to this skill, just one skill, ABC. If we change our belief about what happened to us, we can mitigate, reduce, or eliminate the negative emotions. And if we can eliminate and significantly reduce what we feel, the negative aspect of what we're feeling, we can push through. But it's those emotions that stop us in our tracks and then drives the impulse to go, all right, I'm out. I just can't do this anymore.
That's a powerful law. I appreciate you going into the ABCs specifically. So again, we all have the adversities, whether we're told no or we encounter a significant life event that is not a great life event that happens, right? And then we decide, okay, what's our belief behind this adversity? Even what is the meaning that we're going to attach? What does it mean now that I've been diagnosed with this, or now that I've been told no to this? What do I do next? Which then leads to the consequence. right? And that belief piece is really what determines everything afterwards, the belief that we place behind it, right? So that's very powerful. I appreciate you going into that law of success. And
Now, quickly, an example that I typically give that people can really relate to is that you're driving down the road and it's somebody cuts you off, right? And take that ABC, the activating event adversity is getting cut off. And we typically go from A directly to the C. And the negative emotion is usually driven by this belief that somebody violated you by cutting you off, which means that's anger. So you go right to anger. And that's how it evolves to road rage.
Yeah.
You believe that they did this to you, when in fact, maybe they didn't see you. I've cut people off and I didn't see them.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at my rearview mirror. Oh, I'm sorry. After they blow their horn and they're giving me the fist or even worse, the finger, and or maybe want to try. I didn't mean it.
Yeah.
But they believe that you did this, or you changed the belief about it to the, hey, maybe they're late for work. Someone's at a hospital. They're rushing.
Yeah. They really got to use the bathroom.
Yeah. You change that. And now, guess what? That negative emotion goes away. And we've had people that have been on our calls where we do these skill building who said that their significant other, as they're driving, notices a change in how they respond to getting cut off on the road, that they're not as angry anymore. Yeah. When that was just the typical, you can expect it. Person cut them off and they're going berserk. Right? Yeah. And that was just, say, look, that's the way it is. That's who I am. That's how I respond. And if they do this to me, maybe they weren't trying to do anything to you.
Yeah. So from sales success to helping cure people's road rage, you're helping people all over the place.
Yes. Every aspect of our lives, this applies.
Yes, it absolutely does. You mentioned the calls that you do on a weekly basis. All right. Who are these calls for? How can people join, and what are they going to take away when they join them?
Yeah. So who's it for? If you are a living, breathing human being, it's for you. It's no age. I mean, it's like, okay, we want to get the young folks in this so they can set a firm foundation. We don't care about the older folks because they probably, don't want to change anyway. No. So no matter where you are in the life cycle, that this definitely applies to you anywhere in the world. And what I found is when I done workshops in my first workshop in Asia was in Tokyo a few years back, and when I asked people to introduce themselves, I asked them to share their most crushing adversity, and I shared one of mine, right? So that's a few, believe it or not, and they did, and I'm going, oh my gosh, and these folks who were leading companies and so forth. But no matter who we are, anywhere in the world, what our age is, we have experienced crushing setbacks and adversity. You'd be surprised what people have gone through. So every human being should be on these calls and should build these skills. And we only do it once a week for 30 minutes. We keep them short. There's no assessments, no essays to write. There's no tests to take. You just plug into the calls, and over 3 months, if you're on these consistently, you will notice a difference in how you respond to life's adversities, and you can push through things a lot faster because you are skilled. And so the calls are 7:30 a.m. every Wednesday. So it's every Wednesday. I call it PowerThinking Wednesdays, and it's the most exciting day of the week for me. Because I'm interacting with, well over 60 folks, 70 folks on the morning calls, 7:30 a.m. to 8 a.m. Eastern time. And by the way, we have people from the West Coast where it's 4:30 a.m. that participate in those morning calls. And then we do it again, 9:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. So just 30 minutes. And what we do is we send out a text on a Tuesday night with a video, a YouTube video that I found that relates to a specific inner strength or skill that we'll discuss on a Wednesday. And let's say it's jumping to conclusions. Today, And this is on a
Meditation.
Wednesday. We did this on the 12th. For those who are seeing it at another time, October 12th, for the morning session. What we did was what we focused on was calming and focusing. That's one of our skills. And to that end, meditation. So there was a 2-minute video. So we'll send out a 2 to 5 minute video. This one was on meditation, and we actually had folks do some meditation when we began the call, and we had folks comment on that. So so it's the video on Tuesday night, and then we send text reminders for the 7:30 a.m. call and the 9:30 p.m. call. And to get on that texting list, if it's okay, I can give out my number. Typically, we have a link that we'll send, but I'll just give you the number to call.
We'll have the link too, but absolutely give the link, please. Yeah,
so, and if the link's not working or what have you, then just text your first and last name to area code 215-219-8409. It's 215-219-8409. Just text your first and last name and then dash Brandon, so we know that you came from this particular interaction.
Cool. That's great. I think those calls are incredible. I don't know anyone else doing anything similar to what you're doing, and it's making a difference for a lot of people. And you've given people a time frame too. If you join these calls, which are free for you to join, guys, like it's not going to cost you anything to join and improve yourself and incorporate these power thinking principles. For 3 months, if you join, then you will notice changes in your life. And I'd even argue to say probably a lot sooner than that, right? Especially when you're in individual sales conversations, you're going to be thinking about what was talked about during that morning call. But give it a shot for yourself, guys. Text that number, which will be in the description, or click the link itself in the description to join these calls, get yourself on the list. And I've been, it's been a pleasure to be part of some of one of those calls while I was preparing for this conversation today. But it's very clear that Stanley puts a lot of time and energy into making these calls incredible for you so that you take a lot away from that. Stanley, I know we touched and scraped the surface of your process today. And for those who want to continue going forward, the call is where they want to go. But I just want to thank you for joining the show and for giving us your time this morning. And I'm glad that we've crossed each other's paths. And I'm really looking forward to hear how this continues to help even more people, sir.
Well, Brandon, I thank you so much for this opportunity. It was great to share with you. You're a tremendous host, and I'm honored that we're doing this.
Thank you, sir. Until next time.
Thank you.
These inner strengths can change the game for you. They'll help you achieve your life goals, your business goals, and all it takes is a little energy and effort each day in order to strengthen yourself so that when that adversity hits, right, the ABCs, you're able to form a belief that serves you, and you're able to create a consequence that is a better consequence, right? You're able to take action and create a reality that serves you versus the adverse. So again, links are in the description to go check out Stanley's LinkedIn profile to join the weekly calls that he hosts. Within 90 days, 3 months, you can see significant changes in your life once you begin applying these power thinking principles for yourself, which will help you in your life, your business, your career, your family, every single aspect of your life. I hope that this conversation helped you a lot. If it did, if you took even one thing away, please share this show with just one other person who could use this advice and this information. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in and listening. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.